So our first speaker for session two is Czarina Constantino. She's a conservation leader in the Philippines with a decade-long commitment to environmental advocacy. She formerly served as the program manager for the World Wildlife Fund for Nature Philippines, No Plastic in Nature Initiative, a systemic approach for stopping plastic pollution, where she spearheaded efforts with policymakers, businesses, cities, and communities. And she is passionate about pushing for behavior change and ensuring financial sustainability and conservation initiatives. So here we go. We've got Zarina for our first session. Okay. So I'll take you to the southern part of the Philippines. Please do visit the country. So I'm starting here because I this is a story wherein I've met this young marine scientist. She just graduated from college. And then I met her like in a boat because we were planning to go to an island city. So imagine like the Davao region. And then we came from the central city, which is Davao City. And then we needed to ride a boat for 20 minutes to go to this beautiful island called Island Garden City of Samar. And then from there, I met this young marine scientist, and like I just wanted to strike a conversation. I told her, "How are you? How's life?" And I just learned that she's, as I mentioned, she just graduated from college. She doesn't know what to do with her life, but she was a good diver, and she was the spotter for like marine wildlife photographers. So I'm like, oh, I'm working on plastic pollution. Maybe we can chat more and stay connected. And that was it. And then actually after 6 months, I found myself hiring the person. So we worked in also in Davao region. I worked with her and in pushing or implementing the plastic smart cities. So her name is Che. So that's me. And people would always say that you look similar, but we're not related. And I just met her in that vacation. Um, and then it started this journey or this friendship, I would say, wherein we grew together as conservation leaders, and we grew together supporting each other. Because I would remember we were implementing this project, and then the pandemic hit. And like, ooh, very, very convenient to implement a project that is like super a lot of miles away from the main office. So we kind of build that trust. We worked together. We needed to work together to strategize how to implement the project. We supported each other because definitely there were like a lot of pressure from the main office. How are you implementing the project? Are we still on track? Like, there's no pandemic. So we implemented a lot of projects together. And as I mentioned, eventually she became a project manager. We climbed the ladder in WWF Philippines. And we were so excited. We need to give this growth opportunities to our fellow women in the organization. And we wanted them to like grow and find potential, and then we provide them with these opportunities. But we kind of learned a few things along the way. And the first thing is that in unleashing people's potential, I remember talking with this staffer in practice leading a project, and she told me, "No, I don't want to be a project manager." So it's really more on like maybe and that really struck me like, okay, maybe not everyone wants to have like a similar goal. Maybe their goal is more on like a personal goal, or maybe their goal is like to be the executive director or something of an organization. But I think at the end of the day, we need to kind of align what the goal of the person is. But of course, you want to see their potential and provide that opportunities and ask her, how can I help? And the next part is like creating that circle of support. And I think the previous speakers were already mentioning it. It's important to create that circle of support wherein they would provide you honest feedback, they would criticize you, and they would even like give updates, or just having that truthful conversations with women. And I think it's very important, and I think it's important to create that support, not just for the people that you're trying to help or try to support, but also support for yourself. Because as I would say that being working in the conservation sector is very difficult, and that would
it really finds comfort to have these people who would tell you, no, I think maybe you need to reconsider how you're doing your projects and all. And I think women, I would always find women who would be on the emotional side, who would comfort you, and women who would tell you, okay, now we're done with the emotions. Let's go to like the details of what worked and what did not. And then I think the third point is really passing it forward. And I've experienced a lot of like mentorship has been very difficult, especially in the Philippines for me. But then I kind of found some people along the way. And then my motto before was just to find opportunities to pass the mentorship or pass the help to other people or to other young women striving to make a path or striving to make a difference in the conservation world. And just to update you, Che is actually already taking her master's as well, but in New Zealand. And she also got a scholarship, and we're so very happy for each other. We've worked for 4 years, and we always check on each other, and also just thank each other for having that support. So yeah, that's it.
So next up is Mariam Weston. She's an engineer in sustainable development with an MPhil in conservation leadership, also here from Cambridge. She possesses over 8 years of experience in developing sustainable conservation strategies. Currently, she's working as a grants officer at the Rufford Foundation, where she specializes in the small grant program and coordinating capacity building events worldwide. So let's give it a round of applause for Mariam.
You very much for joining us today. I wanted to start this presentation with just acknowledging a little bit about my positionality. I am from Mexico, so I am very Latina, and sometimes I get nervous when I do public speaking. So if I start talking like Gloria from Modern Family, please bear with me because it happens. And I'm gonna share with you some experiences from my own project back in Mexico. And I wanted to address also my privilege because I have been very privileged to be able to develop my own project in Mexico, which has not been the same for a lot of women in conservation back in my country. And talking about that, in Mexico right now, we are marching, millions of women march every year this day to protest for our rights because Mexico is a beautiful country, but we have a lot of areas of improvement, and gender violence is one of that. So I've been very lucky to make it so far. But today it's a hard day for my fellow women back in Mexico. And I wanted to share that although today I'm here talking about a beautiful project that brings a lot of joy to my life, this situation is not the same for a lot of women back home. So yeah, on a later note, I love cats. I love cats a lot, and I'm gonna talk about a little bit of the background of this project before starting to talk about women. Mexico has 6 species of wildcats. 4 of them are small wildcats. Probably you have never seen them. That's okay. Nobody knows them. And that's why I love them so much. This is the jaguarundi. Look at him. He's not very good for public talking because he's not that handsome, but he is fantastic. It's a species that is vulnerable in my country. It's near, it's least concerned worldwide. Then we have the margai, the ocelot, the bobcat, and of course the jaguar and the puma, but I couldn't fit the puma there, so sorry, puma. And well, in the world, we have 33, we have, I think, more than 37 species of wildcats, and 33 of them are small wildcats. But as you can see, only less than 1% of the global funding for conservation goes for the 33 species. So it's horrible. And that situation is the same for Mexico, where most of our wildlife projects focus on umbrella species like the jaguar, which is fantastic for the states that have jaguars. But in states like my hometown, Morelos, which is next to Mexico City, we don't have jaguars, established jaguar populations. And that's a big problem for conservation because if you don't have a sexy umbrella species, you probably don't have conservation going on. And that's exactly why we decided to launch this project. I begged to my previous boss, like, please let me do something for the wildcats. And he was like, but there's no jaguars. I was like, but there's something else. And indeed, we have of the four species of wildcats in Morelos. This reserve here, it's a state reserve, which is called Sierra de Montenegro. It's literally in the middle of the country, in the middle of the state, and it is forgotten by God and by a lot of other important stakeholders because it's state level, so it doesn't get a lot of funding. And if you can see these holes here, if that's a mine, there's a mine inside of the reserve. Sad. So we started the first ever monitoring in this reserve in 2020, and no later, I met Ignacio. Ignacio is a margay, and it's the first register ever of a margay in that reserve, and in the story of the state is the 5th register of a margay. So Ignacio changed my life, and I love you, Ignacio, and I miss you. And Ignacio helped us start a journey, but also, while we discovered that there were wildcats, we discovered that there were a lot of threats. I'm not gonna focus on all of them, but one of the biggest ones and one of the least addressed is the presence of free-ranging dogs and feral dogs inside of the reserves. And that's a huge problem, but I can go on about this for hours. But I put these pictures together. These are two camera trap pictures overlap, so you can see how close they can interact. And one of the biggest problems is like, well, a lot of people suggest to just shut them down, like, or euthanize these dogs. But I don't know if you can see this picture very well here, but can you guess which kind of dog is that? It's a tiny one, shivering. It's Chihuahua, exactly, yes, it's a Chihuahua. So Chihuahuas are not like feral dogs, they're pet. And when they are inside of the reserve, that means that probably they are a pet that is just roaming around. And if you kill the wrong dog, you lose the whole community. So we didn't want that, and that's how we started working a lot with the community. We are now providing free neutering campaigns. We started doing vaccination campaigns. We also have now a permanent program with the primary school where we work with the kids. We teach them a lot of tools for them to engage with the nature. And we also have a lot of outreach initiatives. So far, we have been able to vaccinate almost 700 dogs. We have been able to neuter 242 dogs. We also have been able to engage with 180 kids permanently through this community program in the primary school. Then we also have other local outreach strategies that we do every week, which is called the Small Wildcat Week, and we go to the primary schools and we talk about that. And we also have 4 murals, 1 comic book, some baseline information, and some published papers. But I'm gonna stop talking about cats so I can talk about women, right? And I think one of the biggest achievements of this project is that it's a female-led project, and that changed everything, because before this project started, nobody was doing conservation in that area, but the people that was doing conservation for other species are men, right? And for me, starting my career, probably I was very naive and I didn't realize that, but I did realize that I have no colleagues working with me, like female colleagues. So as I grew up in this project and in my career, I wanted to engage more women to have a space or a safe space for them to try and to also increase their career. Right now, as you can see, it's a 90% female composed team. We have multi-stakeholder engagement. We are now working with the government. We are working with the manager of the reserve. We have all our veterinarians are female, and most of our biologists are also female. This is Maria, and this is Belen. I just broke the clicker. Sorry. As you can see, this is them in the field, and you can see our biologists taking some samples, and you can see the veterinarians working with one community member over there, and they're all like working together on the ground. Another big advantage of this project has been to be able to create safe environments for interdisciplinary collaborations. And what do I mean about this? Going back to my earlier comments about the security issue, we have been able to create a place where women can come to our project and they don't feel harassed. They feel like they can go to the field. They feel like they can contribute. They feel that they can, add their ideas to the table and they are going to be listened. But most importantly, this is an opportunity for them to try things so they can experience failure and they can learn from that failure in a safe environment that it's not gonna take down their whole career or put them in a situation where they are going to lose something big, no? And one of the biggest collaborations that we do is with artists. This is our muralist. Her name is Monsetelo. She started as a social service, which is like a volunteering program that we have. And she started doing our first mural ever. And then now she's doing this. This is the third mural she does for us. But after she did the murals with us, she was able to grow her portfolio. And now she's like a super renowned artist in Mexico. And I feel like so proud of her. Over here, her name is Andy Malpica. Andy Malpica is our illustrator. She helps us with the outreach comic books for the kids. And I don't know if you see, but she's surrounded by pens and with kids. We invited her to present the comic book to the primary school. And these kids live in a very, it's a still rural area, it's still developing. And for them to see like a rock star artist coming to present them and make the connection that she was the one that illustrated the book, they went crazy. They felt like they had Katy Perry in the room. So they were very inspired as well because they are not really always able to engage with these kind of people. So they were super happy to have a role model there, and she took the time to sign their comics. Belen and Maria are always like presenting them with the workshops that we have, so they're engaging with the different tools that we use for the project. And well, as you can see, this team over here, they are a rockstar team. They are from the most acknowledged university in Mexico, and they are helping us with our One Health approach because we are looking for canine distemper and other diseases that could affect wildlife, and all of their team is female-led. So I'm just very happy that they're contributing there. I'm gonna go faster now. Then we have the local capacity building. I mean, through this project, a lot of students have been able for the first time to have a camera trap in their hands and understand how to use it, and also the importance of engaging with the community. And a couple of them now are leading their own conservation projects. And she also has now new registers of jaguarundis in some areas that we didn't even know that they have jaguarundis. So that was really nice to see. Maria over there, Maria is our field officer, but she's grown so much in her career, and she came to this project being very shy, and now you should see her in the field. She's like a rock star. She's like she tells everybody what to do, and she's amazing. And now she's going to other capacity building events to tell other people what we're doing and how they can embrace it. And this is particularly important because a lot of these people over there are women that are volunteer monitors, and they are learning from another women to do this. So that's also really inspiring. And my favorite part has to be the school program, because we are inspiring new generations. And I'm just gonna share one quick story. One time I was there to facilitate the workshop myself as well. And a little girl approached to me and she was like, "What's your age?" And I was like, 28. And she was like, "Oh, are you married?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm married, but I was not a couple years ago." And then she told me like, "Oh, and what did you study?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm an engineer." And she was like, "You're an engineer? I didn't know that girls could be engineers." I'd never met a female engineer before, and that really touched me because these kids do not get exposed to different characters, just to say it in a way, and being able to shift that perception and that narrative that you have to be in these roles this way, it's the most gratifying thing for me. And as you can see, they are fascinated just to be involved in the projects. So this is probably my favorite part of the project. And some lessons that this project has taught me in a rough way, probably, and I'm probably going to oversimplify them, is that if you are a female in a leadership role where you can make decisions and influence the system, it is important to enable safe environments for other women to grow, because that's the only way that your projects are going to be sustainable in the long term. And we all want to achieve the same goals, right? We all want to save wildcats and other wildlife. So we need more on the team. And sometimes that's not possible, but if we are able to enable those spaces, the road will be easier. Then fight that imposter syndrome, girls, because it's very hard. I've noticed it in myself. Sometimes I get very nervous when I am there talking with like decision makers, but I know more than they know. So why do I get nervous? It's what the panelists were saying before. We I've noticed have a lot of imposter syndrome. So we need to acknowledge it and overcome it. And it's easier said than done, but it's something that I am, at least myself, trying to practice more. And then one of the biggest lessons that I had is that, you know, when I was growing up or like studying, I always heard that, oh, you're very bossy, or you're very sweet, or you're very naive. But I feel like that kind of thinking is important, because being empathetic and being generous and being passionate about what you're doing, it's an important leverage that you can use for your own projects. And it really helps out when you're fundraising, because it helps you connect with people, but also it helps you create a good teamwork environment. And of course, sometimes you have to roughen up, but more than a weakness, I feel like these are superpowers that we have and we are able to connect with. And I'm gonna stop talking now. Thank you so much.
So thank you, Mariam. So next up, but before that, just a quick introduction, because we've met already at this point 5, 6, 7, and a lot of amazing women today. But there's never a shortage of Sheroes. So come back, tell your friends on March 30th. We're gonna have a few more of our amazing Sheroes here at the museum, where you can get to meet and greet them and know about the animals that they're trying to protect. So we'll post more of that, but just to put it out there, it's happening. And last but definitely not the least, we've got Dr. Meredith Palmer. She leads a team at Fauna and Flora International, focusing on equipping young women with the skills to navigate conservation and technology. With her expertise in strategic technological insight, she drives the effective use of cutting-edge tools to safeguard species and habitats. Her dedication to training and mentoring younger women in conservation technology reflects her commitment to building a more inclusive and sustainable future. So let's give a big round of applause for Meredith.
Guys, I'm the last speaker. You guys have made it to the end of these presentations. Thank you, everyone who stayed so late to hear me talk. It is really, really hard going last following all of these amazing presentations. And speaking of imposter syndrome, I'm just sitting here learning about all of the projects and all the incredible work that you have all pulled off. It's amazing. It's incredible. I don't know what I'm doing up here. But I will talk at you because I am up here. I've got some notes because it's late and because I don't want to keep you here for the next 3 hours while I ramble on about all of my favorite things. Is my presentation's coming. Well, I guess I would just want to start then by kind of underscoring the importance of us all being here and having all of these conversations. I feel like as conservationists and scientists, we think a lot about the value of diversity in nature, about how biodiversity makes our systems more resilient and more productive. And we value that diversity in nature, but we overlook and undervalue that same diversity in our professional ecosystem. You know, the research unequivocally shows that diversity, including gender diversity in teams, it makes teams better. It makes them more productive. It makes them more creative. We're better problem solvers. We ultimately have more impact when we're doing this together. And so for all of the women or female identifying people out there, you know, our inclusion in this field, we make this field better. So I feel quite old, actually. In terms of my conservation career, I think I might be a little bit further along on my conservation journey than some of the people who've presented here today. And that's quite nice because now I sit in a position where I get to spend my time uplifting others. And so I'm excited to share today just a couple of my efforts to rewild the field of conservation and do my part to unleash opportunities for other women so that we can succeed and conservation can succeed. So just a tiny bit about my conservation journey. I, like probably everyone here, has always wanted to be a conservationist. I did the thing, I got my bachelor's degree in zoology. I then immediately failed to get accepted into any graduate program whatsoever. I think we've heard a lot about some unexpected journeys today, and as Helen was telling us, not to necessarily accept those rejections as the be all end all. So that passion for wildlife took me to my bachelor's and then went on a bit of a journey. So I ended up doing wildlife tech jobs around the world for a few years. Introduced me to a lot of different sectors. I worked for academia, I worked for government, I worked for private sector, worked with a lot of different people with a lot of different systems before eventually finding my way back. Doing my graduate degree, working with the Serengeti Lion Project, so also a big cat person, I'm sorry. A cat person, can we be inclusive? Okay. I know they're not as cute. So doing a PhD, spending a couple years then in academia, continuing to work with large carnivores and rewilding projects. And then recently, in the last couple of years, doing this quite sharp pivot into where I am now, which is the wildlife NGO, this conservation space. And I guess one thing that I experienced across all of those different roles, all of those different positions, all of those different sectors working in the wildlife and conservation space was sort of the overwhelming pressure to fit into a male mold. The standard that we were being held to as women in these fields, especially in fields where you're doing a lot of work outdoors or with dangerous animals, is they're kind of expected to be a man, and if you're not, that's a shortcoming. And yeah, so I just don't think there's a shortage of us, women with the drive and passion to enter this field. And then what we encounter along the way, these kind of innate biases, the sexism that we encounter, having to deal every day with these constant overt or microaggressions, trying to exist in a field where there's, in some cases, still quite a strong lack of representation, where we don't have role models or support communities in some cases that we can. I mean, even maybe I shouldn't put this up here, but basic struggles of operating in the field, getting field clothing that fits me, getting field boots that are safe. Where do I pee in the field? Someone mentioned menstruating in the field, all of that is hard. And all of these things together as you go on this journey, this is where all the talent and the passion quickly gets weeded out of the field. So now, again, that I'm kind of further along on my conservation journey, I'm really trying to reflect and consciously integrate opportunities into my team and my organization and the work I do to uplift others on this path and create a safer and more welcoming place in our field where diverse voices and diverse perspectives not only can exist, but can thrive, can do our jobs and do the conservation that we want to do. And so underlying all of the work we do, I've divided it into 4 pillars. The kind of projects that I, again, have the privilege to run, providing things that are, I think, quite obvious and foundational, like training and financial support to help people get their foot in the door in a field that is quite competitive and also often relies on doing unpaid internships, doing pay-to-play conservation, having to move away from your families, things that might be in some cases harder for women than for other people entering this field. But then also doing this quite concerted effort to give people mentors and role models, platforms, visibility, and then integrating them into a community where we can have conversations like this and we can support each other and share our challenges and successes along the way. So it was so hard, which is a 7-minute talk. I had to narrow it down to just a few of the things I'm most passionate about to share. So this is just a quick taster of the programs that I'm involved in at the moment that I'm really, really proud of. And so this is my baby. This is my absolute favorite thing that I get to do as part of my job. I'm a conservation technologist, which means I use technology to do conservation. But I now get to support efforts helping upskill a lot of other women to use technology for conservation. My NGO I work for, I think a lot of the organizations here in the DAB and in sort of Western countries in general tend to do a lot of work in Africa and developing countries. But I'm going to use Africa as an example because this is where I work. In Africa, women themselves are historically underrepresented in our conservation sector. So how do we fix that? And so some of the programming I do, we've been working to equip early career women in Tanzania and Kenya, in Mozambique, hopefully in Rwanda in the next couple of years, with the foundational knowledge in all of these emerging technological tools to help them advance their conservation careers. And in doing so, we're creating these communities, these alumni networks, these regional groups of women who can, continue to network and empower themselves as they all move along these conservation journeys. So again, we offer technical training, we offer leadership training. We bring in mentors, so we bring in established female East African leaders who again are further along in their conservation journeys, just so that the women that we work with can see Alina, who runs her own conservation technology NGO, can see themselves in these positions where they're having conservation impact. And then we do a lot of thinking around how do we make, like, this is a workshop. If you can go attend a workshop, that's awesome. But a lot of people can't leave their families, take unpaid leave, go and attend events like this that can move them to the next level. So we've done quite a lot of thinking too, and tried to find support and funding for covering childcare, paying for internships, trying to remove as many of those, or alleviate as many of those family and financial barriers to entry so people can take advantage of what we have to offer. And so a little closer to home, I just started getting engaged with this project. I think this is amazing. I'm super privileged to now be supporting a project called Field Inclusive, which aims to amplify and support historically marginalized field researchers. I'm clearly from the States. You can hear it in my horrible accent. We have a long history of doing really terrible and harmful things to certain sectors of our society in particular. So this is an American initiative that we're looking to expand. But this work seeks to tackle some of those unique barriers to entry and retention in the field faced by women and other marginalized groups, particularly barriers that relate to the safety. The safety of these individuals in the field and in the sector at large. I don't know how many other people have experienced this, but being in the field can be uncomfortable or even dangerous for certain individuals. And those pressures and those threats can come both with the people you might encounter in your field work, the communities that you're working with, but they can also come from your institution or your organization itself. So at Field Inclusive, what we're trying to do is to support researchers by identifying and addressing field safety issues, developing field safety resources, putting together diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings and guidance for organizations. So teaching your supervisor how not to have microaggressions or biases against you, teaching your institution how they should be thinking about, putting tampons in your field safety kit, like all of those things that institutions led historically by men might not be thinking about in terms of our well-being and safety. Also doing things like supporting marginalized field researchers with financial aid, with field equipment, and trying to enable some experiential learning opportunities like those paid internships. We also provide, and we just missed it last year. I'm really sad that I can't put in a plug for it. But we also celebrate and amplify and uplift the voices of those in our community. In January this year, we had a Field Inclusive Celebration Week. It'll happen January next year, but we have a week-long virtual session where we have panels and presentations and events to kind of uplift and amplify the stories of those who are moving through this field and thriving in this field and doing amazing things. So I'm always looking for new ways to grow these programs, expand these programs, adapt these programs to different contexts. The challenges that women face in East Africa are probably very different from the challenges women face in the Philippines versus America. So always looking for insight on how to do this work better, always looking to learn from others and from their experiences. And yeah, would love to share more about this work that we're doing. So thank you very much.
Thank you guys so much for those amazing talks. I think I have not felt this inspired in a long time after this evening. So thank you all for sharing your conservation journeys. And I recall each one of you mentioning, having the importance of having community, whether you're creating it or whether you're part of it, and the benefits that can have and just creating like space for failure. And I think that's so important because often when you're the first woman or sometimes the first woman of color in any field, you're sort of seen as the representative of your type. And so you have lesser space to fail. Of course, then you have more imposter syndrome that's sort of adding to all of that anxiety. So I would love if you could all share an experience of failure, whether it's personal or whether it's failure, just being witness to failure and how that helped the situation, and not seeing failure as this big catastrophic thing, but how that helped sort of pivot your career or pivot someone else's career, or how your community helped support it. Anyone can go first, whoever.
I can start. So like we implemented, or I led this No Plastics in Nature initiative program in the Philippines. And we've been implementing, I think I've shared this in the one of our launch talks, wherein we implemented or created solutions which we felt would be like the best solutions on the field. And then when one of which is implementing a plastic-free community store. So no plastics, just people refilling. And we invested a lot of resources. It was led by a young person who just wants to like push for plastic-free nature in their community. And then I remember like going through this process wherein after like 2 months or 3 months of piloting the solution, she told us, "I'm so sorry. I failed. The people were not buying from my community store because they would have other community stores to buy from." In this like small packets we call sachets, because most of the products in the Philippines are sold that way, and people were not, and we invested a lot, and we would she would tell us, "Sorry, I was such a it failed with me leading it, and like you'll see the soy sauce not selling. It went to a point that it got so bad." But then again, it was in this moment wherein I told her that, "Oh no, don't treat us that way. One is we need to think of it as it's a pilot of a solution. So it's a case study. So you actually supported a case study for us to say that maybe piloting a plastic-free community store in an area where there are other community stores are not plastic-free is not the way to go for our projects." And and from that pilot, we actually found that we failed in a big chunk, maybe 95%, but maybe we found this ray of light wherein people, she told us, "Oh, I was able to convince people that they can refill their cooking oils." And then people were buying from me, and that's the only product that I was able to sell. And we were so happy because I told her, "See, it's a case study and we found something from it. We learned something from it. And we brought this up to the policymakers. And then we were pushing for the policymakers to just ban all the cooking oil that are served in plastic bottles." And that's like a good step. And and we were like working together with also a female who's pushing a female policymaker who's pushing for that policy in the area. So it was a failure, but we learned from it, and we kind of tweak it in a way that there's some hope, and something that we can replicate in other areas.
Mhm. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And Mariam, do you have any insights to share about like having space for that failure, or how your project created that sort of community in Mexico for women and girls to come and try things and experiment and perhaps not see failure as the worst thing?
Yeah, I think, well, for us, failure is known, like we fail all the time.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, I was really scared of failure because I was afraid that my donors wouldn't believe in me, right? Because at the end, we need something to keep doing this project, right? But as we started to see that you cannot achieve everything in a few days or in a year, and conservation takes years, right? That's when I started to relax myself, and I feel like I have been able to share that hopefully, if you're seeing this, I hope that that I have. What we try to say to our team members is like, do not stress about achieving all the goals. Failure is gonna be constant. The thing is that we need to be as constant as the failure is. We need to, if we're gonna do a nurturing campaign and we only have 3 people showing up instead of the 100 people that we budgeted for, you're still gonna go back the next time, because it's that consistency and that building of resilience that will help us achieve what we are doing now. So I feel like we should normalize failure and love it and learn from it. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think in the face of grit and perseverance, failure means nothing in the long term, right? And what about you, Meredith? Have you seen it in your own career, in the work that you do?
So much failure. Like, I guess. I love that we are doing this. I don't think there are enough safe spaces where we can have vulnerable conversations about failure, where we can, like, failure doesn't have to be funny. These are really funny stories with like a twist at the end where it worked out, but there's a lot of failure that doesn't work out. And I think, we're living in an age of social media where you look on Instagram and it looks like someone just like was born to be a National Geographic explorer, and you don't see all of the steps, all of the things that didn't work out, that, there's a survivorship bias in terms of what we see and consume in terms of our role models and how we think a project should look. I mean, I thought I was, born to be the next Jane Goodall, and I couldn't even get into graduate school. I didn't get into graduate school, and that was so crushing for me on my personal career journey, because I had never seen myself as being anything other than a biologist. And then it felt like that door closed to me and I didn't know what to do, like an identity crisis, right? But really, like, to be cheesy, that opened up a lot of other doors, and I did all of these other fieldwork positions, and I learned that there are other ways you can be a scientist and other ways you can have impact other than becoming a professor at a university. I worked for NGOs, I worked for all of these other sectors. I met a lot of people, and those relationships and experiences are still paying off with me today. So yeah, I think there's definitely failures, hiccups along my career path. I think you can definitely pick up a failure and turn it into the next big thing. But it's always so gratifying having a chance to hear from others that they're also going on one of the same roller coaster of a journey that you are. And I do wish we were doing more sharing and normalizing of the failures we have.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point that, yeah, failure can facilitate learning, but sometimes it can just hurt. It's just awful. And it's part of creating a community is creating that safe space to also acknowledge the pain that comes with failure. And speaking of community and speaking of like sort of support, can you sort of, and I remember many of you mentioned like sort of the fact that conservation is not equitable, and there's so much there's so much privilege that's involved in even the people who come to the sector. It's not the most diverse sector in the world. Can you talk a little bit about what you think, like, envision your ideal conservation workplace? Like, what if you had to think about the perfect world, what would that look like for you?
A world where I could do my job. I mean, ideally a world where we wouldn't have panels like this. I mean, like,
there wouldn't be a need for it.
Right, I think about all of the time and energy. Like, I love being a platform to lift up other people. Like, that's the kind of the point in my career where I'm at right now, where it feels so satisfying to help other people take that step. But that's a lot of my job is spent just trying to knock down historic barriers, innate barriers, like systemic issues that are built into our systems, and just kind of dismantle a lot of challenges that don't need to exist. And I would sleep a lot, like I get a lot more sleep if we lived in a world where, we didn't spend 90% of our time just unpicking and advocating for ourselves and having these conversations, and like it's exhausting. It's not like a big rock, it's like a lot of tiny little loads that are wearing down on you all the time, always having to represent, speak up, have a voice. You do the work for the system so that you don't have to do, I don't know. A world with less work, I think, is what I meant.
What do you think, Mariam?
I resonate
Mhm.
completely with Meredith. I think like I just want to do my job without I don't want to get the question like, oh, do you want to have kids? So because that's the question they ask, and I was like, oh, yes, probably. I don't know. What does it matter? Like my brain still works, no? Like, but anyway, I want to live in a world that gender is not an issue for doing your job. And it's not an us problem or a guy problem, it's a system problem, right? And I agree with that there's a lot of other issues behind that need to be addressed, especially in countries like my country where security it's also a gender issue. It feels sometimes like overwhelming and unbearable, but I hope that just helping others come across or be a bridge for others to cross that bridge, if that makes sense, will help us to achieve that at some point.
Yeah, what they said. So, it's I think in terms of a team level or an organization level, just having that opportunity to just share your feedback. Regardless of what your race is, your gender, your age is, just being able to give feedback to someone to improve a specific project. That would be my ideal team and organization. Ideal world, I always envision myself like it would for conservation to work, hopefully we come to a point that we won't need any NGOs. I don't know a lot of us. I know a lot of us are working with NGOs, but I think that having NGOs really just put like this statement or just puts a statement that maybe that's the system is not working because we would need a lot of NGOs, small or big, to kind of make conservation. And in terms of maybe like how conservation works, my idea word being a conservation social scientist, like having that interconnectedness among disciplines, because like from my country, I come from a country that's where conservation is still very focused on natural sciences. So maybe like an integration of other sciences would be a good way for conservation to work. So yeah.
I completely resonate with you. At this point, does anyone have any questions for our amazing speakers here? Albina.
I have a question for Mariam about the Chihuahuas.
Perfect.
I could relate to that because we have a huge issue with stray dogs in Georgia. That's how I on all my field works with all the stray dogs, shepherd dogs and whatever. It's a huge problem. So how did Chihuahua end up in forest or whatever? I mean, I've never met Chihuahua.
They're very cute, very fun.
Yeah.
Well, the communities that we're working with we decided to work on not more than 5 kilometers around the registers where we have wildcats. So why did we do that? Because there's literature that says that free-ranging dogs move between 5 to 8 kilometers from their houses. And the Chihuahua just proved us right. Like he just went, he's tiny, he's probably not gonna survive, but he managed to get out of his house and to just have a little paseo, like a field trip to the reserve. Yeah, so that's how that was very helpful because that's the way that we realized that we needed to work with the communities. And it's gonna take us probably 20 years to achieve to people to keep their dogs inside their house, but because it's gonna be behavioral change. But we'd rather have them on our side than against us, if that makes sense.
That's very insightful and surprising question. I don't know how Chihuahuas get into forests. Any other questions from anyone? Jessa?
I guess
So we all come from different countries, right? It's quite diverse, but at the moment we're in the space of Cambridge. I wonder if there's like a words of motivation or like phrases you tell yourself every day as far as like, sorry, I'm not making sense, right? But it's like when you're thinking about imposter syndrome, you mentioned about imposter syndrome and like bringing people out. In spaces like Cambridge where there's so much pressure to be excelling or whatnot, what do you tell yourself? What do you remind yourself every time you wake up and you're like, there's so much pressure?
For me, I spend the day just to cry. And then the next day, it's on. Then that's how I deal with it. Because like I tend to be emotional at some point. And then like when you just pile it up, you just need to let it out. So I'm like, what I do is I've been getting a lot of frustrations in my coursework, so but I'm not gonna tell you the details. So and it really piles up and it will come to a point like I will just go to my room, I'll just cry. But then again, I will tell myself that, oh, you cry, you be emotional, but tomorrow you better get up, girl, because we need some course to finish. So yeah, so that's what I tell myself. You first.
Um, I don't think it's as much telling myself as reminding myself. I think one of my favorites, like the Women in Conservation Technology program I was sharing about, we're entering our third year now. Every year we had a cohort of like 10, 15 amazing, like absolutely firecracker, incredible ceiling breaking women. Like they're powerful and wonderful. And they just need like one tiny crumb of opportunity. And they all seize hold of that and they like take it and run. And so like just looking at pictures of their faces, I don't know, that sounds real corny. But like sometimes, you know, we keep in touch, like we have a mentor, like student relationship, and we share emails and I do job recommendations for them and they send me updates. Like it is a community. And so last year we did a program in Tanzania, which is where I did my PhD research. When I was doing my PhD research, I set up a long-term monitoring program there, which had like 400 camera traps, which has been running for the last 10 years in my absence. And so our program this year, we had an intern show up at this program. And she came, she did our program, we paid for her to do an internship where I did my PhD. She worked on exactly the same she kept maintaining the same camera trap grid that I maintained 10 years ago. And that experience, I just got an email from her last week. She wrote about that experience in her grad school application, and she just got a really prestigious fellowship to go to Glasgow and get her master's degree up in Glasgow. And for a woman from a small town in Tanzania to take a hold of, like, I'm not doing anything other than just, again, like providing opportunities that it's them, not me, but it's really wonderful getting a chance just to reflect on those little wins and just see how your effort can help move people forward like that. And also a lot of crying. I cried. I did too. But yeah, like those moments.
Like reflecting on the actual impact of the work that you've done and the fact that it does make a difference.
Yeah.
Even if it's in the lives of like 10 people in the past 2 years, it's still so much and that's so impactful.
So much for them.
Yeah. And what about you, buddy?
I go to therapy, man. I go to therapy and I yell at my husband. No, it's very pressure. Sometimes I'm just like, why don't you, like, can I just go back to Mexico and work with the cats and just do that? But I remember that I have the privilege to be here to give a voice as well, because now I work as grants officer in a very large funding organization, and I feel very privileged that I am also a voice for people like me, and connecting the dots between just having a discussion and setting ground and making people understand what it's like to be on the field work. It makes me feel very happy that I'm able to give that voice. So that's what keeps me alive, and my psychologist and my husband.
I think we're about the end of our time this evening, but does anyone else have any questions? Any final questions, closing?
One about, so I wanted to bring this topic of fear, yes, because sometimes, I mean, it appears in different ways in our conservation journey, but sometimes it can be an enable, but after it can become after like some kind of overcome or pass your resilience point, and maybe to say no. And we have that in the field but also in Cambridge and after your coursework as well, there is more fear, and when moving from different sectors. And so how to, maybe some ideas about how you have deal with fear and trying to make it a friend, or or maybe say goal or yes.
If I may.
Like to answer?
I mean, I think I really resonate with that because especially when I got into the MPhil in Cambridge and before I came here, I was racked with fear and anxiety, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm going to Cambridge. I'm going to a place where people are like actually smart. Like then people are going to find out that I'm just like. But I think what really helped is I started picturing like, okay, so what? Like I actually took that to the logical end. I would be like, okay, people are going to find out that I'm not smart. Okay, and I just took it to the very extreme. And then when you picture the worst possible situation, you realize you can still handle it. Like, it's so what? Like, people are going to find out that you're stupid, then you find out that they're stupid in a different way, and life moves on. And also, just reflecting back on previous times where you've experienced failure and you've gotten past that, and just knowing that you have it in you to experience the worst possible situations and you will still somehow always be okay. I think that's helped a lot for me, is to just play out the situations to the worst end and also still know that even at the worst, you'll be okay. I think that helps. But yeah, anything from you guys?
I've come to know myself enough now after 3 decades to like weaponize my own fear against myself. So like what, I think I'm more afraid of letting people down than I am of doing a big scary thing. So if I'm about to embark on a big scary thing, like start a new project, apply for a grant, write a paper that I am absolutely, like, pardon my French, but like scared shitless to do, I'll tell a bunch of people that I'm gonna do it. And then they hold me accountable and I become more afraid of failing to live up to their expectations. Then I become afraid of doing the big scary thing. So I try and use fear in very creative ways to get me to do the stuff that I'm absolutely terrified of doing. Otherwise, everything is scary. I don't know. It doesn't get less scary. I think everything is just scary in different ways.
Yes, I can just imagine like my background is actually psychology, and imagine entering like a conservation world wherein people are all biology. So I'm like, hello world. So so it was very difficult. I was really scared. But I would always say I faked it till I made it. So and I'm here, but of course, like in those situations, you also need to like equip yourself not just to be scared of the situation, but actually preparing yourself that you're entering a very difficult situation, transition. But then again, when you're prepared, I think everything will fall into place. If it's not, then it's a learning experience. That's how I frame it.
I mean, I've been watching Avatar a lot lately. I pick up, it's amazing. It's amazing. There's he said something about like being brave is not about overcoming your fears, but doing keep doing it with fear, like keep going all with fear. And I really resonate that. Like I feel like I'm scared right now talking to you, and like I'm here I'm talking. So I feel like fear is also like a gasoline or like a power to use to push you forward. Going to the field though, it's real fear in some countries, and it's really, really scary sometimes. But I guess like you have to take your right measure, like precautions, and having a good team and a support circle, no? And, do your due diligence before going and taking that adventure. But never stop fear, do what you love, no? I feel like that's one of the biggest things that I live by, because otherwise I'll be in my room in Mexico, not doing anything. So.
Thank you guys so much. That was really inspiring, and I love that we spoke about everything from failure to fear to
Yes.
to faking it till you make it, which is clearly how we've all got here. Well, thank you guys so much for your time.
There we go, and happy International Women's Day, everyone. And hopefully it's not just a day, no? Like we live it every day. So have a lovely evening.